Motion blur and stop motion can help smooth out action that's happening very quickly and would otherwise look chattery without the effect. For example, here it is without motion blur, and here it is with. So we're going to look at two different kinds of motion blur effects. One is where the effect is applied to the entire object in the shot, and another where the effect is applied only to part of an object in the shot, in this case the arm. So first going to demonstrate how it's done on the whole object using Stop Motion Pro, which has a feature that enables this effect. First I'm animating an anticipation. Anticipation is always important in a very fast motion. The action is happening so quickly that you need to tell the audience what's going to happen before it happens. So in Stop Motion Pro, it's called frame averaging, and it's basically a timed exposure. You move the entire object while the frame is being exposed, and it's shooting multiple frames and then averages those frames. And so here it is, simply exported right out of Stop Motion Pro with the effect already applied. So to accomplish the effect on, say, just the arm, we're going to average the frames manually. Now he's doing an anticipation, so just kind of cranking through that real quick here. Did it in 2, so not too smooth. The plan here is to shoot 2 extra frames for every frame in the fast motion. And in those extra frames, you only move a little bit the part that's going to be blurred, like the arm. So the move on the arm should overlap the original frame by 90%, maybe even 95%. Just want a little bit of an effect. So again, each frame, each big move is accompanied by 2 smaller moves. And I'm going to give him a blink, and since he's hitting himself on the side of the head, I'm going to do an offset blink, have one eye start sooner than the other. Since I don't want it to look like he's giving himself a concussion, I'm actually kind of easing out the move as it approaches the head. Being a fast move is kind of subtle, but to increase the feeling of the impact, as soon as the hand hits the head, the very frame that the hand hits the head, I move the head. This is a little trick for increasing the impact of, say, a punch to the face, is you don't have a frame where just the hand is contacting the head and the head hasn't started moving yet. The very frame that a fist would be contacting the head moves. I digress. So the motion blur effect continues as he hits the head and rebounds off his own head. And of course you can't really preview it at the speed or the smoothness that it's going to be because we've had to record 3 frames per big move. And as the hand finishes and goes into a recoil, or its follow-through, then getting back into ones. And so in playback, again, it looks pretty bad. But in editing, in this case in Final Cut, I'm going to find those frames where they're in 3s, and I'm going to slice up those 3 frames and stack them up. In effect, sorting out the trio of frames shot for each big move. Here I've cut them into sections, cut them into individual frames, and then stack them up, 3 frames per big move. And then deleting the space in between, and continuing with the entire head strike until they've all been done. And now when I single frame, I can see just the big moves each time. No motion blur, but I can see that everything has been arranged properly. To get the motion blur effect, I'm going to change the opacity to 50% on one frame and then copy that attribute to all of the extra frames. So all those frames on the 2 extra tracks are going to be 50%. And now I've got the motion blur effect. The 3 frames have been averaged into 1, and we get that action smoothed out. So to get that effect in Dragon, what you do is when you shoot those extra frames, just delete them as you go. The effect is that, of course, all the main frames will be in the feed folder, and all the frames that you deleted are in the backup. You have to manually find them, but you can import them into Final Cut, or in this case into Photoshop, where the same idea of changing the opacity of the extra frames to 50% can get the motion blur effect.
क्या है तुम्हारे पास?